Welcome everyone. Welcome to the course Nature and Properties of Materials. In week 3 we'll talk about metals and ceramics. So this course is offered by Professor Vishak Bhattacharya from Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Kanpur. I am your TA Alka Jangir from IIT Kanpur. So firstly we'll start with some sample assignment questions which will help you in solving your weekly assignments, and then we'll go through some lecture notes. So first question is main form of ceramic degradation, and your options are corrosion, weathering, self-dissolution and swelling. So your answer will be weathering. So as it can be explained in when you talk about weathering, then it is the main form of degradation of ceramics, and this involves the breakdown of ceramics through contact with the Earth's atmosphere, water and biological organisms. While corrosion is always referred for metals, and it occurs due to oxidation, sometimes at high temperature or because of sea water and other atmospheric conditions. And swelling is referred for polymers, and swelling is the penetration of a solvent into polymer network which can cause an abrupt change in volume. Second question is the iron carbon alloy containing less than 0.83% carbon is called. Your options are high speed steel or hypoeutectoid steel, hypereutectoid steel or cast iron. So answer will be hypoeutectoid steel. So from iron carbon phase diagram we know that at around 0.76% or 0.8% you find your eutectoid composition. So carbon percent consisting that it will have pearlite only microstructure. So if you move to the different sides, then you will be finding out if you take more carbon, then it will be hypereutectoid steel, and if you have lower carbon, then it will be hypoeutectoid steel. And in case of cast irons, if you move from 4.3 weight percent carbon, it is your eutectic composition, and if you move on either side, it will be hypoeutectic steel cast iron or hypereutectic cast iron. In case of in this question, hypoeutectoid steel will have your proeutectoid ferrite, and if it is hypereutectoid steel, then it will have proeutectoid cementite. Next question is which of the following is an example of a mechanical metamaterial? Your options are rubber, glass, steel and origami structures. So as you can see, these upper three options are not metamaterial and simple materials. Origami structure is a example of metamaterial. And as you might know, these shapes that are made using papers, these are known as origami structures. So when you design these type of structures using materials, then it is mechanical metamaterials, and these are rationally designed structures of precision geometrical arrangements leading to unusual physical and mechanical properties. Next question is ladybirite microstructure in eutectic steel consists of alternating layers of two phases, namely gamma austenite, and other microstructure is either bainite, cementite, martensite or austenite. So your answer will be cementite. Ladybirite is eutectic that forms an iron carbon phase diagram. So it is a phase mixture of gamma austenite which has FCC structure and cementite Fe3C. So these phases, they exist in the form of alternating layers. Now question 5 is, which type of mechanical metamaterials are capable of morphing into different shapes when subjected to external stimulus? So your options are programmable metamaterials, or magnetic metamaterials, origami inspired metamaterials, or self-healing metamaterials. Your answer will be origami inspired metamaterials. Now researchers have developed a special class of origami metamaterials which show a constant value of Poisson's ratio when subjected to stress. So when a material is crushed or stressed along a particular direction, it undergoes a modification in the perpendicular or lateral direction, and the ratio between the deformation along the force and the deformation in a direction lateral to the force is called the Poisson's ratio. And this Poisson's ratio, it can be positive or negative based on type of materials. So in order to be useful, materials need to maintain a constant Poisson's ratio when they crumble under pressure. So however, they are prone not to do so, and the Poisson's ratio varies as they deform. Next question is again related to Poisson's ratio. So which of the following is an example of a mechanical metamaterial with a negative Poisson's ratio? So your options are carbon fiber composite, aluminum alloys, auxetic foam, or steel beams. So your answer will be auxetic foams. So auxetics are somewhat looks like these as shown here. So these are structures or materials that have negative Poisson's ratio. When stressed, they become thicker, also in perpendicular to the applied force direction. So this occurs due to their particular internal structure and the way this deforms when the sample is uniaxially loaded. These auxetics, they can be single molecules, crystals, or a particular structure of macroscopic matter. Now 7th question is, any misinformation in the following rapid facts on steel alloys? So your options are chromium improves oxidation and corrosion resistance, sulfur decreases brittleness, and nickel increases hardness, or cobalt improves strength at high temperatures. So 3 facts are correct. One that is incorrect is sulfur decreases brittleness. So other statements are correct except sulfur decreases brittleness, because when sulfur impurity increases in an amount higher than 0.05%, it causes brittleness. So sulfur, it forms some inclusions which sit at grain boundaries, making steel brittle. So as you can see here as well, with the relation between impact energy and temperature. So as you keep on decreasing temperature of material, you see rapid decrease in impact energy, so they become brittle at lower temperatures. 8th question is a numerical. So in this case, you are given an aluminum alloy which has yield strength 145 MPa. It has an average grain size of 2 micrometer, and the Hall constant depicting resistance to dislocation is 70 MPa. So if the grain size is reduced to 100 nanometer, what will be the new yield strength based on Hall-Page relationship? So your grain size changes from 2 micron to 100 nanometer. So because of this, what will be change in yield strength? So from Hall-Page, you know, this is the relation sigma y equals to sigma naught plus ky times ky divided by under root d. So your d is your grain diameter and your ky and sigma naught are constants, and sigma y will be your yield strength. So here we know most of these values except ky. So in first case you can find out ky for 2 micrometer grain size. So here 145 is your yield strength and 70 is a value of your sigma I. So this one will be 70 plus ky upon root 2. So you can find value of ky. So then you can put value of ky when you find out sigma naught for here it will be sigma y. So sigma y will be equal to 70 plus 75 multiplied by root 2. This is the value of k, then under root 0.1 this is the value of grain diameter. So you will be finding out value of your yield strength to be 405 MPa. Next question is carbon steel has blank weight percent carbon. So for steels, what will be the carbon weight percent? And your options are 4 weight percent, 6.7 weight percent, lesser than 2.1 or greater than 2.1 weight percent. Answer will be less than 2.1 weight percent. So by definition, carbon steel is steel with carbon content from about 0.05 up to 2.1 weight percent by weight. It is up to which point the eutectoid product is made in steel on cooling, and if carbon weight percent is more than 2.1 weight percent, then it falls in the cast iron category as the eutectic reaction occurs, which is characteristic of cast iron. Next is which cast iron has graphite in flake form. So these are your options: white cast iron, grey cast iron, malleable cast iron or nodular cast iron. Answer will be grey cast iron. So here in figure as well it is shown what type of microstructures are there for various cast irons. In case of grey cast iron, it is in flake form as shown here. So flakes are of graphite. In case of white cast iron, you have this cementite network, and in case of chilled cast iron, you have different type. Here at malleable cast iron, you will be having irregular shaped aggregate form as shown here. In case of nodular or ductile cast iron, you will be having these in form of rosette or some spherical form of the graphites. So these are made based on various heat treatments. Now we'll be going through some lecture notes. So these will be helping you in understanding what is taught throughout the week. So firstly, classification of metals. So metals can be classified into ferrous and non-ferrous metals. So ferrous will be having some iron content and non-ferrous will be everything besides iron based alloys or iron. So in case of ferrous, they can be divided into two classes: steels and cast irons. In case of steel, you will be having carbon weight percent less than 2.1 weight percent carbon, and if carbon is more than 2.1 weight percent, then it will be cast iron. In case of non-ferrous metals, you have aluminium, titanium, copper and bronze. Bronze is your alloy of copper and tin. Next we'll be talking about iron. So iron, in case of when you study about 3 age system, in that case Iron Age began about 3000 years ago and it is continuing today. In this carbon, when you add carbon in iron, it forms an interstitial solid solution when added to iron, uh, and atomic radius of carbon is very smaller compared to iron, so it goes and sits in interstitials. And the use of iron and steel, it has changed drastically the human development. In When we talk about pure iron, then it shows allotropy, which means it exists in two or more different phases in the same physical state. So when it's in solid state, it can have different type of forms, which can be based on crystal structure or their domain structure. So below 770 degrees Celsius, it's found in form of alpha iron form, also known as ferrite. So it is ferromagnetic in nature and it has BCC crystal structure. And above 770 degrees Celsius, it turns into, which is known as Curie temperature. So above this, it is paramagnetic in nature and same BCC crystal structure. At 912 degrees Celsius, it changes into FCC crystal structure and it is known as gamma iron, and if it consists some carbon, then it is called austenite. Above 1394 degrees Celsius, it exists in delta iron form, which is again BCC crystal structure, but it has different lattice parameter compared to your alpha iron. And at 1538 degrees Celsius, it melts. Now steel can also be classified in various classes. So based on alloying elements, it can be low alloy steel and high alloy steel. So low alloy steel can be classified in low carbon steel, medium carbon steel and high carbon steel. High alloy steel will be tool steel and stainless steel. There can be other forms of high alloy steel as well, such as maraging steel and other steels, but here we'll be mainly talking about these two steels. So in case of low carbon steel, you have carbon weight percent lesser than 0.25, and if it is greater than this and below 0.6 weight percent, then it is medium carbon steel, and high carbon steel will have from 0.6 to 1.4 weight percent carbon. Now firstly, we'll be talking about low carbon steel. It contains less than 0.25 weight percent, also known as mild steel, and it is relatively soft and weak. So it can be easily machined and weldable, so that's why it's used in various structures. It has outstanding ductility. It shows around 25% elongation and high toughness, and it is least expensive to produce compared to other steels, and its tensile strength varies from 415 to 550 MPa. Applications: it is used in making beams, channels, nuts, bolts, wires, tin cans, etc. Next categories, if you define low alloy steel, then these will be containing some alloys such as copper, vanadium, nickel, molybdenum up to 10 weight percent. So if it is more than 10 weight percent, all combined alloying elements, these are different from impurities. So if you count sulfur and phosphorus, those will be counted in impurities, but if you are adding something which is desirable in your steel, then these will be alloying elements. So their combined weight percent is greater than 10 weight percent, then it will be high alloy steel. Here in case of low alloy steel, these have high strength and corrosion resistance compared to plain low carbon steel, and tensile strength will be higher up to 700 MPa. Next is medium carbon steel. In this case, you will be having carbon weight percent from 0.25 to 0.6 weight percent. It is stronger than low carbon steel, but of low ductility and toughness. It has good wear resistance, and that's why it is used in making gears, crankshafts, tracks, and railway wheels. And these uh, carbon steels, they have tensile strength up to 850 MPa, while alloy steel will be having strength up to 1900 MPa. Next is high carbon steel. So it is hardest and strongest and least ductile carbon steel. So they are used in making tools. So it can be alloyed with carbon and other metals to form very hard and wear resistance materials such as chromium, nickel, tungsten, molybdenum, and vanadium. Now these will be forming carbides and will be providing strain to your steel. Applications are in cutting tools, dies, and saws, concrete drills, etc. Next is tool steel. It is part of high alloy steel. This is commonly used in drill bits and other rotating cutting tools. It can withstand higher temperatures without losing its hardness and toughness. Example is 1841 high speed steel, which has 18% tungsten, 4% chromium, 1% vanadium with a carbon content of 0.6 to 0.7 weight%. Next is cobalt high speed steel, which has increased heat resistance. Molybdenum high speed steel. In this case, molybdenum increases hardness and wear resistance, which is also cost effective replacement for tungsten in tool steels. Next is stainless steel. It is highly resistant to corrosion in a variety of environments. In this case, you have predominant alloy element, which is chromium, at least 11 weight%. Example is 18H stainless steel, in which you have 18 weight% chromium and 8% nickel. Some of the applications of stainless steels are in cryogenic vessels, food processing equipments, gas turbine parts, high temperature steam boilers, heat treating furnaces, and nuclear power generating units. Now, effect of alloying elements on steels. So when you try to add some alloying elements, so they have some effects. You want to make sure that if you want some property, then you add that particular alloying element. For example, if you are adding boron, then it improves hardenability of steel without loss of machinability. And if you are adding chromium, then it improves oxidation. It forms a oxide layer on your steel, which doesn't flake as much as iron oxide layer. So it improves oxidation at high temperature and corrosion resistance, and your corrosion resistance may also be enhanced by nickel and molybdenum additions. Cobalt and tungsten, these improve strength and hardness at elevated temperatures. Sulfur improves machinability if it's combined with manganese, and if it is present alone, then it decreases your ductility and it lowers impact strength and ductility. Manganese improves hardenability and wear resistance, and it counteracts the brittleness caused by sulfur. Next is molybdenum. It improves hardenability and toughness, and it improves elevated temperature strength and creep resistance. Nickel increases strength and hardness without sacrificing ductility and toughness. Vanadium increases strength, hardness, wear resistance, and resistance to shock impact at high temperature. Titanium improves strength and oxidizes steel. Now, in case of cast irons, you have mainly 4 categories. First one is grey cast iron. So this is the microstructure shown for grey cast iron. You have graphite flakes in the matrix of ferrite. So in this, carbon content varies from 2.5 to 4 weight%, and you also have high amount of silicon, which causes formation of graphite. Now graphite exists in the form of flakes, and these flakes give self-lubricating properties and vibration damping capability. Strength and ductility are much higher under compressive loads, and tensile strength is from 120 to 280 MPa. The application for this cast iron is in base structures for machines and heavy equipment that are exposed to vibration. So this is used in making lathe machine beds as well. So next is white or chilled cast iron. In this case, you won't be having any graphite, and carbon is found in form of carbide. So cementite, which is the hardest constituent of iron. It is formed by rapidly cooling molten iron. It is very hard and wear and corrosion resistant. It is almost non-machinable, and it is used in making rollers and rolling mills. And here this is the these are the white portion that is shown, that is your cementite network, and other is pearlite. Next is malleable cast iron. So it is formed by heating white cast iron between 800 to 900 degrees Celsius for a prolonged time in a neutral atmosphere. To prevent oxidation, it leads to decomposition of cementite, forming graphite in the form of clusters. It is highly shock resistant or tough, and it has tensile strength from 350 to 450 MPa. It can be hammered to small thickness, and the applications are in making connecting rods, transmission gears, pipe fittings and valve parts. Next is ductile or nodular or spheroidal type of cast iron. So in this case, it is obtained by adding small amount of magnesium, so from 0.1 to 0.8% to molten grey cast iron. It leads to formation of graphite in the form of spheres, and it shows high fluidity, toughness and high wear resistance. In this case, it has high tensile strength from 400 to 900 MPa, and it has good machinability and weldability. Now, effect of impurities in case of cast irons. So if you have silicon present, then it promotes the formation of free graphite, and it makes iron soft and easily machinable. It also produces sound casting free from blowholes, as having a high affinity for oxygen. Next is sulfur. It makes cast iron hard and brittle, and above 0.1% it makes unsound casting. Next is manganese. It makes cast iron hard by formation of carbide, and it keeps control over harmful effects of sulfur. Next is phosphorus. It imparts fusibility and fluidity but induces brittleness. Next, moving on to non-ferrous alloys. So these are basically classified into two main categories: heavy alloys and light alloys, based on their density. So in case of heavy, you have copper, nickel, cobalt, silver, gold, etc., and their alloys. In case of light alloys, you have aluminum, zinc, titanium, magnesium, etc., and their alloys. Now, first, the element that is found in abundance around us, it is aluminum. So it has crystal structure of FCC, and that's why it is highly ductile. It has melting temperature which is very low, 660 degrees Celsius, so it has high manufacturability as well. it has density 2700 kg per meter cube, which falls in light category, and it has elastic modulus 70 GPa. It is silvery grey lustrous metal, and it has very high thermal and electrical conductivity. Next is titanium. So it is expensive compared to other metals, and in case of pure titanium, it has low density 4500 kg per meter cube, and it has very high melting point 1660 degrees Celsius, and it has elastic modulus 107 GPa, and tensile strength is around 150 to 500 MPa. Now its appearance is silvery grey, white metallic luster, and applications. It has high strength and temperature components, and also in case of biomedical and jewelry purposes. In this case, alloying is required to reduce cost, and it increases strength and control phase. So titanium has two crystal forms. Below 883 degrees Celsius, it has alpha structure, which is HCP, and above this it has beta structure, which is BCC. So there are four types of alloys possible: alpha, near alpha, alpha beta, and beta phases. And in case of, if you add some alloying elements, you can determine what will be the final structure. So if you add aluminium, gallium, germanium, carbon, nitrogen, then these are alpha phase stabilizers. If you add molybdenum, vanadium, tantalum, niobium, manganese, iron, chromium, cobalt, nickel, copper, silicon, these are beta phase stabilizers. Next is zinc. It has crystal structure HCP, so it is not that much ductile as aluminum and other metals, and it has melting point 420 degrees Celsius, which is why it has easy castability. It has density 7140 kg per meter cube, and it has silvery grey lustrous appearance. The applications of zinc alloys: it is used in galvanic coating on steel in case of hot dip, and corrosion protection of structures by attaching as a sacrificial anode. And next is in zinc carbon dry batteries, so it is used as electrodes in case of dietary intake as well. So deficiency of zinc leads to weak immunity, slow brain growth, and diarrhea and pneumonia, and it is found in spinach, cashew, seafood, cocoa beans, etc. Next is copper. So it has crystal structure FCC, so that's why it is highly ductile and used in making wires, and it has melting point 1085 degrees Celsius. It has density 8920 kg per meter cube, so it falls in heavy metals. It has distinctive reddish orange color, and it has good corrosion resistance. It falls in noble metals. It is soft, malleable, ductile, and very tough. It has good machinability. It has high electrical and thermal conductivity. If you see thermal conductivity order, then aluminum has above aluminum you will be finding copper, then above this you have silver. So silver has highest thermal conductivity, but it is more expensive compared to copper. In case of 99.99% pure copper, it is used for wiring applications, and it also possesses around 97% of conductivity of silver at 1/8 of the cost. Now, as seen here, it is used in making wires, tubings, and also for home some appliances. Next is nickel. So its crystal structure is FCC. So it also has melting temperature around 1455 degrees Celsius. Its density is 8900 kg per meter cube, and it has silvery white lustrous metal with a slight golden color. Its applications are in nickel metal hydride rechargeable batteries, in Monel metal is your nickel and copper alloy, and primarily composed of nickel and copper with traces of iron, manganese, silicon and carbon. These have strong corrosion resistance, and it is used in heat exchanger tubes, food processing plant and marine applications. Next, its application is also in super alloys based on nickel chromium. So it has high creep and oxidation resistance at elevated temperatures, approximately 1100 degrees Celsius, and used in turbine blades. Next is cobalt. So this has HCP type of crystal structure, and it has density around 8900 kg per meter cube. So it is also heavy metal. It has melting point around 1495 degrees Celsius, which is closer to nickel. It has lustrous silvery grey metal, and it is elastic modulus is 209 GPa. And its main application is in production of high performance alloys. So it is more expensive, so it is mainly used for alloying purposes. For example, cobalt based alloys are also corrosion and wear resistant. Some high speed steels also contain cobalt for increased heat and wear resistance. It is also used in medical orthopedic implants, which is known as Vitalium cobalt chromium molybdenum alloy. It is alloyed with 95% platinum for jewelry. And next is cobalt based blue pigments. They impart a distinctive blue tint to glass. Next up, we have strengthening mechanisms in metals. So the ability of metal to plastically deform depends on ability of dislocations to move. So if you restrict or hinder the dislocation motion, then it will make a material harder and stronger. So some mechanisms to strengthen metals are as follows. First is grain refining, next is solid solution strengthening, strain hardening, precipitation strengthening and martensitic strengthening. Next is composite strengthening. So some of these will talk about in detail, but in case of martensitic strengthening, in this case you use this in case of steels. So if you form martensite by quenching your steel, then it will be forming martensite which has higher strength compared to other microstructures. Composite strengthening, in this case you form composite by either dispersion of some ceramic particles or other phases, making your material of higher strength. Now first we'll talk about grain refining. In this case you have a fine grained material, one that has small grains, and it is harder and stronger than a coarse grain due to a greater total grain boundary area to restrict dislocation motion. So for example, if you have this dislocation present, if you want to move this dislocation from one place to another, then this grain boundary, it restricts its motion, making this material harder and of higher strength. Now this is the Hall-Page equation that you will also require for solving some numericals if you are asked in assignment. So in this case your sigma naught is equals to sigma I plus ky upon delta d root d. So under root d, so d is your um, average grain size and sigma naught is your yield strength of material. Sigma I is your frictional stress opposing motion of dislocation. So this is a constant. Ky is also a constant which depends on extent to which dislocations are piled up. So this will depend on how much plastic deformation your material already has undergone, and these are properties of materials. The critical grain size, which is typically around 100 nanometer, the yield strength would either remain constant or decrease with decreasing grain size. So this phenomena is known as inverse Hall-Page relation. Next is solid solution strengthening. In this case, pure metals are almost always softer than their alloys. So adding another element that goes into interstitial or substitutional positions in a solution, it always increases its strength. And the impurity atoms, they cause lattice strain which can anchor dislocations. So alloys are stronger than pure metals. So as shown here, if you are adding nickel in copper, so as you keep on increasing amount of nickel, your tensile strength will keep on increasing, and percent elongation ductility, which is this, will decrease. Next technique is strain hardening. In this case, you enhance the strength with increased plastic deformation. So as you keep on deforming your material, it becomes stronger and stronger. So strain hardening is the phenomena whereby a ductile metal becomes harder and stronger as it is plastically deformed. It is also called work hardening or cold working because the temperature at which deformation takes place is lower than the melting temperature. The effects of strain hardening may be removed by annealing heat treatment. So if you heat your material, then these dislocations, they move from the material and it provides relaxation to the strain. So this is slow heating and slow cooling type of heat treatment, which is annealing. Next is strength increases but ductility is sacrificed in this strain hardening technique. Now from this graph as well, we can see that as you keep on increasing the stress applied on material, your dislocation density will keep on increasing, which will lead to strengthening of material. Next up we have precipitation or edge hardening. So this is technique used to increase the yield strength of malleable materials like aluminium, copper, alloys, stainless steels, etc. It is based on changes in solid solubility with temperature to produce fine particles of an impurity phase which blocks the movement of dislocation in a crystal's lattice. So alloys must be kept at elevated temperatures for hours to allow precipitation to take place. This time delay is called aging. For example, if you have this type of material where you have presence of some solute atoms, then these solute atoms, they try to agglomerate and form a different phase. So theta double prime, theta and GP zones, these are formed in case of aluminum copper alloy. And this is your edge hardening treatment. In this case, you firstly heat your material in single phase area, then you quench your material, you cool your material fast, then after that you heat your material in the temperature where precipitation can form. Corrosion of metals, Pilling-Bedworth ratio. So in this case, this is the ratio that decides whether your material is oxidation resistant or not. So in this case, for good oxidation resistance, the oxide should be adherent to the surface. and there is a ratio, Pilling Bedworth ratio, which is just the ratio of volume of oxide formed divided by volume of metal which is consumed in making of this oxidation. So if this ratio is less than 1, then there will be tensile stresses present in oxide film. So this oxide will be brittle, it will crack, and thus it will be unprotective layer. If this ratio is between 1 and 2, then there will be some compressive stresses present in oxide film which will be uniformly present over the metal surface, so it will be protective layer. So if it is higher than 2, then it will be having high compressive stresses in oxide film which will lead to oxide crack and flake off, which will lead to again unprotective type of layer. So for these various oxides, various metals, if you have your metal is potassium, sodium and magnesium, then these are having this ratio lesser than 1. So there is tensile type of stresses. For all these three, you won't be having any protection against corrosion. If it is aluminium, nickel, copper, chromium, then these are having between 1 to 2. So these provide good corrosion resistance. If it is iron, then it has higher ratio compared to 2. So it will have compressive stresses leading to again less corrosion resistance. Next up we have ceramics. So ceramics word is derived from the Greek term keramikos, which means burnt stuff. So clay is the earliest known ceramic used for making potteries, and ceramic materials are inorganic crystalline materials made from compounds of a metal and a non-metal, primarily held by ionic and covalent bonds. Glass by definition is not a ceramic because it is an amorphous solid, non-crystalline, but its mechanical properties behave similarly to ceramic materials. Now some common characteristics are that these ceramics are hard and brittle. So in the carbon in the form of a diamond, hardest known material, which is also a ceramic. It is strong in compression, typically 10 times compared to then tension, and they are weak in tension. These are chemically inert because they are already in oxide state, having higher oxidation state. So they are more likely to go under any chemical change. They are also insulators of heat and electricity, except carbon in form of diamond and graphite. So diamond shows good thermal conductivity, and graphite shows good electrical and thermal conductivity. It has high and well defined melting point. Next up we have classification of ceramics. So first is natural ceramics. In this case you have limestone, which is calcium carbonate. Abrasive, so these ceramics are used for abrasion purposes. Options are silicon carbide, tungsten carbide, alumina, or corundum, or silica sand. Next is refractories. These are used in making furnaces and some bricks. So your examples are alumina, silica, bricks, fire clay, zirconia, magnesia, and barium oxide, etc. In case of glasses, you have non-crystalline silicates containing other oxides such as calcium oxide, sodium oxide, potassium oxide, and alumina. In case of piezoelectric ceramics, you have barium titanate, lead titanate, lead zirconate titanate, also known as PZT, and you have potassium niobate. Next is based on bonding in ceramics. You have two types of ceramics, ionic and covalent ceramics. So many ceramics, they exhibit a combination of ionic and covalent bonding types. So the degree of the ionic character being dependent on the electronegativity of the atoms. So first we have ionic ceramics. In this case, your ionic bonding is predominant and they are compounds of a metal with a non-metal. So the electrostatic attraction between the unlike charges is responsible for dense packing. Examples are NaCl, magnesium oxide, zirconium oxide and alumina. Next we have covalent ceramics. In this case you have covalent bonding and these are compounds of two non-metals or occasionally pure elements such as graphite, diamond. Bonds are formed by sharing electrons with their neighbors to give a fixed number of directional bonds. Examples are silica, graphite, diamond, etc. Finally, we have failures in ceramics. So ceramics have negligible plastic deformation before fracture. So there is no warning before their failure, and the brittle fracture of ceramics limits its applications. Failures in ceramics occurs due to the unavoidable presence of microscopic flaws such as micro cracks, internal pores, and atmospheric contaminations that result during fabrication. And the inherent flaws, they lead to crack formation and propagation. Ceramics are good structural materials under compression as difficult for cracks to propagate. The flaws cannot be closely controlled in manufacturing, which leads to a large variability, scatter in the fracture strength of ceramic materials. That's it from notes. Okay, I'll repeat the sample assignment questions once. First question, we had main form of ceramic degradation. Your options were corrosion, weathering, dissolution and swelling. So your answer will be weathering. So in case of ceramics, the degradation is called weathering. If you have metals, then it will be corrosion. If you have polymers, then it will be swelling. And so weathering is the main form of degradation of ceramics, and weathering involves the breakdown of ceramics through contact with Earth's atmosphere, water and biological organisms. Corrosion is prevalent in metals, while swelling is seen in polymers. And swelling is penetration of a solvent into the polymer network, which can cause an abrupt change in volume. Next question was iron carbon alloy containing less than 0.8% carbon is called. Your options are high speed steel, hypoeutectic steel, eutectoid steel or hypereutectoid steel or cast iron. So answer will be hypoeutectoid steel. So from this phase diagram, you can see if you have 0.76% or 0.8% carbon, then it will be your eutectoid composition. If you have below this, then it will be hypoeutectoid steel. If you have higher, then it will be hypereutectoid steel. Next question is, which of the example is a mechanical metamaterial? Options are rubber, glass, steel, origami, structures. Answer will be origami structures. So these are the mechanical metamaterials which have which are designed structures of precision geometrical arrangements leading to unusual physical and mechanical properties. Next question was ladeburite microstructure in eutectic steel consists of alternating layers of two phases, namely gamma austenite and your other microstructure is cementite. So ladipurite is phase mixture of gamma austenite, FCC structure and cementite. These phases exist in form of alternating layers. Next question is, which type of mechanical metamaterials are capable of morphing into different shapes when subjected to external stimuli? So options are programmable metamaterials, magnetic metamaterials, origami inspired or self-healing metamaterials. Answer will be origami inspired metamaterials. So origami materials, they are special class of metamaterials which show a constant value of Poisson's ratio. Next question is, which of the following is example of mechanical metamaterial with a negative Poisson's ratio? So your options are carbon fiber, composites, aluminum alloys, auxetic forms or steel beams. So answer will be auxetic forms. Auxetic forms have such a design, so if you are stretching them in particular direction, in perpendicular direction as well, they show thickening. Next question is, any misinformation in the following rapid fits on steel alloys? So your options are chromium improves oxidation and corrosion resistance, sulfur decreases brittleness, nickel increases hardness, and cobalt improves strength at high temperature. Answer will be sulfur decreases brittleness. So sulfur leads to formation of inclusions which sit at grain boundaries, making steel brittle. So if you have sulfur higher than 0.05%, then there will be brittleness. Next question is based on Hall-Page relationship. So you are given initial grain size as 2 micron and yield strength as 145 MPa. You are given resistance to dislocation 70 MPa and grain size is reduced to 100 nanometer. You have to find out yield strength. So using this Hall-Page relation, you can find out first value of Ky. So this will be 75 multiplied by root 2. So you can put this directly in this equation and change the grain size value to 0.1 relating to 100 nanometer. So then you can find value of this sigma y, it will be 405 MPa. Next up you have carbon steel has blank weight percent carbon. Options are 4, 6.7, less than 2.1 or greater than 2.1. Answer will be 2.1 weight percent. So as you saw earlier in iron carbon phase diagram, if you have less than 2.1 weight percent, you will be seeing eutectoid type of products in your steel, so which is characteristic of your carbon steel. Next is, which cast iron has graphite in flake form? Your options are white cast iron, grey cast iron, malleable cast iron and nodular cast iron. So answer will be grey cast iron. So there are various types of forms of carbon. So in case of grey cast iron you have flake, in white cast iron you have cementite network, in your ductile cast iron you have spherical, in malleable you have some aggregates, irregular shaped aggregates. So these are various shapes. Okay, if you have any query you can ask or you can leave the meeting. I'll be present here till 5.